Hello, I am Francesca Brady and I'm the CEO of Aerated. Here's a question for you. What do you, Bear Grylls, and Donald Trump all have in common? Well, for starters, you seem to understand the importance of air. Whether it's for physical survival or political survival. And here's another thing. The air we breathe impacts us all. You, me, Bear Grylls, even Donald Trump. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender, what age, what sexuality, what your financial status is. The air we breathe affects every one of us. It's known to have an effect on almost every major organ in our body. Our lungs, hearts, our brains. Air is important for life. It impacts us from the moment we're born and draw our first, rather loud, breath, to the moment we draw our last breath. Really, we do one big, beautiful circle, beginning and ending with the same action. So why is it that we care about what we eat, most of us making a conscious effort to eat healthily? We drink clean, filtered water because it's good for our health. However, when looking at the full picture of our individual health, air quality is a vital determinant in this overall picture, but we tend to neglect it. Why is that? Is it because a satisfied need no longer motivates? Well, this satisfied need has been compromised from time to time. These masks might seem disturbingly familiar, but no, it wasn't anything to do with a virus. These images are from the Great Smog of London in 1952. The Great Smog is thought to be the worst air pollution event in the history of the UK, and the most significant in terms of its effect on environmental research, government regulation, and public awareness of the relationship between air quality and health. After this event in 1952, there were changes to practice and regulation, drastic to begin with, most notable perhaps being the introduction of the Clean Air Act 4 years later in 1956. This is an example of an extreme event that catalysed change, much like we're seeing with COVID today. But this rate of change started to tail off over the following decades. Perhaps that's because we went back to not being able to see poor air quality again, particularly indoors. The indoors is where we spend 90% of our time and where we feel safe. Nothing bad can get in because we shut it all out, right? Can't see it, not happening. Ignorance is bliss after all. However, we can see this, the cold, hard facts. Firstly, we understand that the indoor environment can be up to 5 times more polluted than the outdoors. On a global scale, 7.7% of all premature deaths are linked to poor indoor air quality, according to the World Health Organization. In the UK alone, poor indoor air quality contributes to the premature death of roughly 20,000 people every year, the equivalent of 54 deaths per day. To put this in context further, in the UK, more people will die prematurely from the impact of poor indoor air quality than will be seriously injured or killed in road traffic accidents. Double the number of people will die prematurely from indoor air pollution than will die from breast cancer in any given year. The problem is, apart from scary death numbers, the data is scarce for indoor air quality, your levels of PM2.5, your levels of VOCs, because so few people and organisations and governments are monitoring these environments. Of those, fewer still, will communicate the health of indoor air, usually due to sheer confusion around how to convey the data. And so many of us will continue to reside and work in buildings where we don't know the health of the air. But we, as humans, don't particularly like the unknown. It's why we're afraid of the dark. At Aerated, we found that being able to communicate the quality of indoor air in a simple and effective way, like through the use of an air score, instills confidence in people and gives them a sense of well-exercised duty of care. Where indoor air quality monitoring has been neglected, we've actually seen people take it into their own hands to get this data themselves, taking control of their own health if no one else will. The technology is there, so it's only a matter of time before all of us will be able to monitor our own personal exposure wherever we are. Forward-thinking property owners and employers are starting to utilise this information and these easy ways of displaying information to attract and retain tenants and staff, but also to optimise the operation of buildings themselves, to keep them healthy at efficient running costs. The need to know and the fear of the unknown is starting to surface, and it's creating change. So things are improving. It's not all doom and gloom, really. Premature deaths associated with indoor air pollution have fallen by 33% over the past 2 decades. This is due to growing knowledge around the things that impact indoor air quality. We banned smoking indoors back in 2007. We became more conscious about the materials used to construct and furnish our buildings. For example, now all forms of asbestos have been banned in 67 countries. The phasing out and blanket bans came into effect across the globe in the late 90s and early 2000s. The regulation of VOC content in paints, varnishes, and similar products has been enforced since the mid-2000s. So we're starting to get it, but we're still missing other things. Poor indoor air quality has a number of contributing factors. This, again, relies on us looking at the full picture. Firstly, you've got indoor point sources like cleaning products, carpets, furniture, candles, and air fresheners. In fact, we're introducing a lot of things that compromise our own indoor environments that we aren't even aware of. Which leads into my second contributing factor, which is the way in which we use our spaces. At Aerated, the biggest culprit we see come into play, all too regularly, in residential and commercial settings, is lack of adequate ventilation. At home, when you're air drying clothes or you're showering, you need ventilation to prevent that buildup of moisture, as it's the main reason for damp and mold problems. And not ventilating a space where you cook allows nasty pollutants from the combustion of fuel to build up. Lack of adequate ventilation in office environments can lead to a buildup of carbon dioxide, elevated levels of which impair cognitive performance, so how you process data, how you make decisions. The third contributing factor is the quality of the air outside, which plays a big part in the quality of our indoor spaces, particularly in naturally ventilated spaces. These contributing factors are one thing, but perhaps one of the biggest obstacles for healthy buildings has been the disconnect in the relationship between sustainability and indoor air quality. Issues in air quality that arise from those indoor point sources I mentioned earlier are then exacerbated by our tendency to make our buildings increasingly airtight in an attempt to make them more energy efficient. Gradually over the past couple of years, we've become wise to this and we've addressed it in standards such as BREEAM, which mirror this understanding in their accreditation. However, we continue to see a disconnect with sustainability. For example, a recent trend for openable windows is something we're now seeing more and more. This is an exercise in sustainability, but also human psychology. The problem is, the smart technology behind openable windows will mostly be monitoring outdoor air temperature. It'll then alert the building systems as to when the optimal air temperature outside is reached for maximum energy efficiency, whilst also promoting the fresh air appeal of an open window. What it neglects is the poor air quality issue. For example, this summer we've had a number of heat waves, one of which coincided with a forest fire close by to my home just outside London. Keeping the windows closed at night made it feel unbearable to sleep, it was so warm. So opening them up to allow the cooler, fresher air in was a relief. However, one particular night that was not the case. Although the air temperature outside was good for cooling down my room, I was then confronted with a suffocating pollution from the nearby fire. This is an extreme example, but it's important nonetheless. We need to take into account more than just one variable for measures like these. It requires a full picture approach. So, to wrap this up, collecting good, accurate indoor air quality data, that's the first bit. Working out where we are now, the current state of play. Diagnosing the problems, that's the next bit. And we need to take into account all contributing factors to come up with the best, most effective solutions. Finally, we need to create lasting improvement. The full picture is, yes, understanding all the different elements that contribute to this cocktail of indoor air that we're exposed to for 90% of our lives. But it's also promoting the wide-scale transparency of the health of our indoor environments. It's education around best practice for maintaining healthy spaces, and it's increased awareness and regulation. Our buildings need to be resilient, and they need to be future-proof, but so does our behaviour, and so do our solutions. So I leave you with this. A folktale from India describes a journey taken by 6 blind men who on their journey encounter an elephant, something none of them have ever seen or come across before. The first man reached out his hand and touched the elephant's side. An elephant is solid and strong like a wall. The second man put out his hand and felt the elephant's trunk. An elephant is like a giant snake. The third man felt the elephant's tusk and said, "This beast is sharp and deadly like a spear." The fourth man touched one of the elephant's legs and exclaimed, "An elephant is no more than a large cow." The fifth man felt the elephant's ear and said, "This creature is large and like a fan." Finally, the sixth blind man touched the elephant's tail, coming to the conclusion that he was the butt of a joke and said, "I know this is no elephant, it's merely a piece of rope." A long story short, although each man was partly in the right, none had the true full picture. Thank you.